The Power of Small Steps. Introduction. Success is often imagined as a sudden transformation, a dramatic breakthrough, a single moment that changes everything. We picture the overnight success, the instant rise, the turning point where everything falls into place. But if you look closely at the lives of those who have truly achieved something meaningful, you will discover a quieter, more powerful truth. Success is rarely the result of one big leap. Instead, it is built through small, consistent steps taken day after day, often unnoticed, often uncelebrated. This book is about those steps. It is about the invisible progress that happens when no one is watching. It is about the discipline required to keep going when motivation fades. It is about understanding that greatness is not born in moments of intensity, but in habits of consistency. The power of small steps is not just a concept, it is a way of living, a mindset that transforms how you see effort, failure, and growth. We live in a world that glorifies speed. Everything around us pushes us to move faster, achieve quicker, and expect results immediately. Social media shows us the highlights of other people's lives, making it seem as if success comes easily and instantly. This creates a dangerous illusion that if we are not progressing quickly, we are failing, that if results do not appear immediately, our efforts are meaningless. But this illusion is one of the greatest obstacles to real success. True growth is slow, it is patient, it is built in silence. The strongest foundations are laid one brick at a time, not all at once. A tree does not grow tall in a single day. It grows through countless days of unseen development, strengthening its roots before reaching for the sky. In the same way, your success depends on what you do repeatedly, not occasionally. This is where self-discipline becomes essential.
Self-discipline is often misunderstood. Many people think it means forcing yourself to do things you hate or living a life without enjoyment. But true self-discipline is not about punishment. It is about alignment. It is about choosing what truly matters over what feels easy in the moment. It is the ability to act according to your goals, not your moods. Motivation can start the journey, but it is discipline that sustains it. There will be days when you feel inspired, full of energy and determination. On those days, taking action feels natural. But there will also be days when you feel tired, distracted, or discouraged. Days when the goal feels far away, when progress seems invisible, and when giving up appears easier than continuing. It is on those days that your future is decided. Because success does not depend on what you do when you feel good. It depends on what you do when you don't. Every small step you take, no matter how insignificant it may seem, carries weight. Reading a few pages instead of none, practicing for 10 minutes instead of skipping entirely, choosing to try again instead of quitting. These actions may appear small in isolation, but over time they compound, they build momentum, they shape your identity. You do not become successful by achieving one big goal. You become successful by becoming the kind of person who takes consistent action. And that transformation happens gradually. One of the most powerful shifts you can make is to stop focusing only on outcomes and start valuing the process. When your happiness depends solely on results, you become impatient and easily discouraged. But when you learn to appreciate the daily effort, the small wins, the tiny improvements, you begin to enjoy the journey itself. This is the secret that many people overlook. They wait for a big moment to change their lives, not realizing that their life is already being shaped by the small choices they make every day. The decision to wake up a little earlier, the choice to focus instead of procrastinate, the habit of showing up even when it's hard. These are the moments that define you. And the beauty of small steps is that they are accessible to everyone. You do not need special talent, extraordinary intelligence, or perfect conditions to take a small step. You only need the willingness to begin, to take action, however small, and then to repeat that action consistently. Over time, those small steps create something powerful, progress that cannot be easily reversed. Consistency turns effort into identity. When you repeat an action enough times, it becomes part of who you are. You are no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You are a disciplined person. You are no longer someone attempting to succeed. You are someone who succeeds through consistent effort. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because once something becomes part of your identity, it no longer requires constant effort to maintain. It becomes natural. However, this journey is not without challenges. There will be moments of doubt, times when you question whether your efforts are worth it, periods where progress feels slow or even non-existent. You may compare yourself to others and feel behind. You may face setbacks that test your commitment. But these moments are not signs of failure. They are part of the process.
Every meaningful journey includes obstacles. What separates those who succeed from those who give up is not talent or luck, but persistence. The ability to continue taking small steps even when the path is unclear. Failure in this context is not the opposite of success. It is a component of it. Each mistake teaches you something. Each setback strengthens your resilience. Each challenge forces you to grow. When you adopt the mindset of small steps, you stop fearing failure and start seeing it as feedback. You understand that progress is not a straight line, but a series of adjustments. And this understanding gives you freedom. Freedom from the pressure of perfection. Freedom from the fear of starting. Freedom to take action without needing everything to be ideal. Because you realize that you do not need to have everything figured out to move forward. You only need to take the next step. This book will guide you through that journey. It will show you how to build self-discipline in a practical, realistic way, not through extreme changes, but through simple, repeatable actions. It will help you understand how habits are formed, how consistency is maintained, and how small efforts lead to significant results over time. You will learn how to overcome procrastination, manage your energy, and stay committed even when motivation fades. You will discover how to create systems that support your goals and how to develop a mindset that embraces progress over perfection. Most importantly, you will learn to trust the process. Because once you understand the power of small steps, you will never underestimate your ability to change your life again. No matter where you are starting from, no matter how far your goals may seem, you have the power to begin, right now, with one small step, and then another, and another, until one day you look back and realize that those small steps have taken you further than you ever imagined. This is the journey you are about to begin. Not a journey of sudden transformation, but of steady, meaningful growth. Not a story of overnight success, but of daily commitment. Not a search for shortcuts, but a dedication to the path itself. Because in the end, success is not something you find, it is something you build, one small step at a time.
Chapter 1. The Myth of Big Changes. From a young age, many of us are taught to believe in big moments. We grow up hearing stories of sudden success, dramatic transformations, and life-changing decisions that happen in an instant. The hero decides, acts, and everything changes. The struggling individual discovers one powerful idea, and their life is never the same again. These stories are inspiring, but they carry a hidden danger. They make us believe that real change must be big, fast, and dramatic. As a result, we begin to underestimate the power of small beginnings. We tell ourselves that we will start when the time is right. We wait for motivation, for the perfect plan, for a burst of energy that will push us into a completely new version of ourselves. We imagine waking up one day suddenly disciplined, suddenly focused, suddenly successful. And because that moment rarely comes, we remain stuck, waiting, hesitating, and postponing the very actions that could change our lives. This is the myth of big changes. The belief that transformation must be immediate and noticeable is one of the biggest obstacles to progress. It creates unrealistic expectations and sets us up for disappointment. When we try to change everything at once, we quickly become overwhelmed. We set ambitious goals, create intense plans, and push ourselves hard for a short period of time. But without a solid foundation, this effort is difficult to sustain. And so we fall back. Not because we are incapable, but because we tried to move too fast. Think about how many times you have decided to change your life overnight. Maybe you planned to wake up early every day, exercise for an hour, read multiple books a month, and eliminate all distractions at once. For a few days, you might have followed through. You felt motivated, even proud of your effort. But soon the pressure became too much. One missed day turned into two, and eventually you returned to your old habits.
This cycle is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of a flawed approach. Real change does not come from intensity, it comes from consistency. When you focus only on big changes, you ignore the reality of human behavior. Our minds resist sudden, drastic shifts. We are creatures of habit, and habits are built gradually. Trying to replace all your habits at once is like trying to rebuild a house by tearing it down in a single day. It is exhausting, unstable, and often unsustainable. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of trying to change everything at once, you focused on changing just one small thing? This is where the power of small steps begins to reveal itself. A small step is simple, it is manageable. It does not require a massive amount of energy or motivation. It is something you can do even on your worst days. And because it is so small, it is difficult to avoid. Instead of saying, "I will read 1 hour every day," you say, "I will read 1 page." Instead of committing to an intense workout, you start with 5 minutes of movement. Instead of trying to eliminate all distractions, you focus on one task for a short period of time. At first, these actions may seem insignificant. You might even question whether they are worth the effort. But this is where most people misunderstand the process. The goal of a small step is not immediate results, it is consistency. When you take a small step, you are not just completing a task, you are reinforcing a behavior. You are sending a message to yourself, "I am someone who shows up." And that message, repeated over time, becomes a belief. This is how change begins, not with a dramatic moment, but with a quiet decision repeated daily. Consider the difference between someone who waits for motivation and someone who relies on small steps. The first person acts only when they feel ready. Their progress is inconsistent, driven by emotion. The second person takes action regardless of how they feel. Their progress may be slower at first, but it is steady and reliable.
And over time, steady progress always wins. Small steps remove the pressure of perfection. They allow you to begin without fear. When the action is simple, you are more likely to take it. And once you begin, something interesting happens. Action creates momentum. You may start with just 1 page, but often you will read more. You may begin with 5 minutes, but you might continue longer. The hardest part is not the action itself, it is starting. Small steps make starting easier. They lower the barrier. This is why they are so powerful. Another important aspect of small steps is that they build trust with yourself. Every time you follow through on a small commitment, you strengthen your confidence. You prove to yourself that you can rely on your own actions. This trust is essential for long-term success, because without self-trust, even the best plans will fail. When you constantly break your own promises, when you set big goals and fail to meet them, you begin to doubt yourself. You lose confidence in your ability to change. But when you succeed in small, consistent actions, you rebuild that confidence step by step. You begin to see yourself differently. You are no longer someone who tries and fails. You are someone who acts and follows through. This shift in identity is more important than any short-term result. The myth of big changes focuses on outcomes. It asks, how quickly can you transform? But the reality of lasting success asks a different question. Who are you becoming? Because at the end of the day, your life is not shaped by what you achieve once, but by what you do repeatedly. If you want to become disciplined, you do not need one perfect day, you need many consistent ones. If you want to succeed, you do not need one big breakthrough, you need countless small efforts. And this is both challenging and empowering.
Challenging because it requires patience. You will not see immediate dramatic results. Progress will often be slow and subtle. There will be days when it feels like nothing is changing, but empowering because it puts control in your hands. You do not need to wait for the perfect moment. You do not need extraordinary conditions. You do not need to feel ready. You only need to take the next small step. And that step is always available. It is available when you are tired. It is available when you are busy. It is available when you feel unmotivated, because it is small enough to fit into your life no matter the circumstances. This is the true power of small steps. They make progress possible at any time. As you move forward in this book, you will begin to see how this principle applies to every area of your life. Whether you are building discipline, developing a new skill, or working toward a long-term goal, the approach remains the same. Start small, stay consistent, trust the process. Let go of the need for big changes and focus instead on small, meaningful actions. Because in the end, it is not the size of your steps that determines your success. It is your willingness to keep taking them. And once you understand this, you will never look at progress the same way again. Chapter 2. Discipline over motivation. There's a moment at the beginning of every journey when everything feels possible. Your energy is high, your vision is clear, and your desire to change is strong. You feel motivated, inspired, and ready to take action. In that moment, it seems like nothing can stop you. But that moment does not last. Motivation is powerful, but it is also temporary. It comes and goes like a wave, sometimes strong, sometimes barely present. It can be influenced by your mood, your environment, your energy levels, and even the smallest events in your day. One good experience can boost it, while one bad moment can make it disappear. And this is where many people struggle. They rely on motivation to take action. They wait until they feel ready, until they feel inspired, until they feel like doing the work. But because motivation is inconsistent, their actions become inconsistent too. Some days they are productive and focused, while other days they do nothing at all. This creates a cycle of progress and tawakuf, movement and stagnation. At first, it may not seem like a big problem. After all, you are still making some progress, right? But over time, this inconsistency becomes the reason why many goals are never achieved. Not because they're too difficult, but because they are not pursued steadily. This is why discipline matters more than motivation. Discipline is different. It is not based on how you feel. It is based on what you choose. It is the ability to take action even when you do not feel like it. It is showing up when your energy is low, when your mood is off, when distractions are everywhere. Discipline is quiet, but it is reliable. Unlike motivation, which pushes you forward occasionally, discipline carries you forward every day. It does not depend on excitement or emotion. It depends on commitment. And commitment is what creates results. Imagine two people with the same goal. The first person waits for motivation. They work hard when they feel inspired, but they stop when they do not. The second person relies on discipline. They work even when they feel tired or distracted. They may not always feel excited, but they continue anyway. At the beginning, the difference between them may not be obvious. In fact, the motivated person might even move faster in the short term. But over time, the disciplined person will always go further. Because consistency beats intensity. This is one of the most important truths you can understand. A short burst of effort may feel productive, but it is not what creates lasting success. What truly matters is your ability to show up repeatedly over a long period of time. Small actions done consistently will always outperform large actions done occasionally, and discipline is what makes that consistency possible. But how do you build discipline? This is where many people feel stuck. They believe discipline is something you either have or you don't. They see disciplined individuals as naturally strong, focused, and in control, while they see themselves as lacking those qualities. But this belief is not true. Discipline is not a trait, it is a skill. And like any skill, it can be developed. It does not begin with extreme effort or strict rules. It begins with small decisions. Each time you choose to take action instead of avoiding it, you are strengthening your discipline. Each time you follow through on a commitment, no matter how small, you are building that skill. This is why small steps are so important. If you try to build discipline through large, difficult actions, you will likely fail. The effort will feel overwhelming, and you will struggle to maintain it. But when you start small, the process becomes manageable. You create a system that you can sustain. For example, instead of forcing yourself to work for hours, you start with a short, focused session. Instead of trying to change your entire routine, you focus on one habit at a time. These small actions may seem simple, but they are powerful because they are repeatable. And repetition is what builds discipline. Another important aspect of discipline is reducing decision-making. Every day you are faced with choices. Should you work or rest? Focus or distract yourself? Continue or stop? If you rely on motivation, these decisions become difficult. Your mind looks for comfort, for the easiest option. But when you build discipline, you reduce these decisions. You create routines. You decide in advance what you will do, and you follow through without questioning it every time. This removes the need to rely on how you feel in the moment. You act because it is part of your system, not because you feel like it. This is what makes disciplined people effective. They do not waste energy deciding whether to act. They simply act. Over time, this creates a powerful advantage. While others are waiting for motivation, you are already moving forward. While others are starting and stopping, you are continuing. This steady progress may not always be visible, but it is always happening.
And eventually, it leads to results that cannot be ignored. It is also important to understand that discipline does not mean perfection. You will have days where you struggle, days where you miss a step, where you feel off, where things do not go as planned. Discipline is not about never failing, it is about not quitting. It is about returning to your path again and again. Many people make the mistake of giving up after a single failure. They miss one day and they feel like they have ruined everything. But this is not how progress works. One missed step does not erase all the steps you have taken before. What matters is your ability to continue. This is where discipline shows its true strength, not in perfect execution, but in persistence. When you fall, discipline helps you get back up. When you lose focus, it brings you back. When motivation disappears, it keeps you moving. And slowly, something begins to change. What once felt difficult becomes easier. What once required effort becomes automatic. The actions you used to resist become part of your routine. You are no longer forcing yourself, you are simply following a pattern you have built. This is when discipline becomes part of your identity. You are no longer someone who is trying to be consistent, you are someone who is consistent. You are no longer someone who depends on motivation, you are someone who takes action regardless of it. And this identity is powerful. Because once you see yourself as a disciplined person, your behavior begins to align with that belief. You make decisions that support it. You act in ways that reinforce it. This is how lasting change happens.
Not through a single moment of motivation, but through repeated acts of discipline. As you continue this journey, you will begin to notice a shift. You will stop waiting for the perfect mood. You will stop relying on temporary feelings. Instead, you will build a system that supports your goals. A system based on small steps repeated daily. And through that system, you will discover something important. You do not need motivation to succeed. You only need discipline. Because in the end, it is not what you feel that determines your future. It is what you do consistently over time.
Chapter 3. The Compound Effect of Small Actions. At first glance, small actions seem insignificant. Reading a single page, practicing for a few minutes, making one better choice in your day. These things feel too minor to truly matter. They are easy to overlook, easy to dismiss, and often easy to skip. After all, how much difference can one small step really make? This question is the reason many people abandon the process before it has a chance to work. They expect immediate results, visible progress, and clear signs that their efforts are paying off. When those results do not appear quickly, they begin to doubt the value of what they are doing. But what they fail to see is that small actions do not work in isolation. They work together. They build upon each other. They compound. The compound effect is one of the most powerful forces in personal growth, yet it is often misunderstood because it is not dramatic. It does not produce instant results. It operates quietly, gradually, and consistently. In the beginning, it is almost invisible, but over time, it becomes undeniable. Imagine placing a single drop of water into a container, then another, and another. Each drop seems meaningless on its own. You could easily ignore it, thinking it will never amount to anything. But if you continue, if you keep adding drops without stopping, eventually the container begins to fill. And then, one day, it overflows. The overflow appears suddenly, but in reality, it is the result of every single drop that came before it. This is how progress works. Every small action you take is like a drop. On its own, it may not seem important, but when repeated consistently, it contributes to something much larger. The problem is that most people stop before they reach the point where the results become visible. They give up during the invisible phase.
This phase is where discipline and patience are tested the most. You are putting in effort, but you do not yet see the outcome. You are moving forward, but it feels like you are standing still. It is easy to question yourself during this time. Is this really working? Should I be doing more? Why am I not seeing results? These questions are natural, but they can also be dangerous if they lead you to stop. Because the truth is, progress is happening, even when you cannot see it. Just like a seed growing underground, the most important changes are often hidden at the beginning. The roots are forming, the foundation is being built, and although there is no visible evidence yet, the process is already in motion. When you understand the compound effect, you begin to trust this process. You stop expecting immediate rewards and start focusing on long-term results. You realize that every small action is an investment. It may not pay off today or tomorrow, but over time it accumulates. And accumulation creates transformation. One of the most powerful aspects of the compound effect is that it works in both directions. Positive actions, repeated consistently, lead to growth and success, but negative actions, repeated consistently, lead to decline. Skipping one day may not seem like a problem. Choosing distraction over focus once may feel harmless, but when these choices become habits, they begin to compound as well. This is why small decisions matter so much. Your life is not shaped by one big choice. It is shaped by the accumulation of many small ones. The direction you are heading in is determined by what you do daily, not occasionally.
If you take small positive steps every day, you will eventually move forward. If you take small negative steps, you will gradually move backward. And the difference between the two paths becomes greater over time. At the beginning, the gap is small, almost unnoticeable. But as days turn into weeks and weeks into months, that gap widens. One path leads to growth, confidence, and progress. The other leads to frustration, stagnation, and regret. The difference is not in one big moment. It is in the accumulation of small actions. This understanding changes how you approach your daily life. You begin to pay attention to the little things. You stop underestimating small efforts. You realize that every action counts, not because of its immediate impact, but because of its long-term effect. This also helps you overcome the need for perfection. When you focus on the compound effect, you understand that missing one step does not ruin everything. Just as one positive action does not create instant success, one mistake does not destroy your progress. What matters is the overall pattern. Are you moving forward more often than you are moving backward? If the answer is yes, then you are on the right path. This perspective removes unnecessary pressure. You no longer feel the need to be perfect every day. Instead, you focus on being consistent over time. You allow yourself to make mistakes as long as you continue moving forward. This is how sustainable progress is built. Another important aspect of the compound effect is momentum. At the beginning, taking action requires effort. You have to push yourself. You have to overcome resistance. But as you continue, as your actions become habits, something changes. It becomes easier.
You no longer need as much energy to start. The behavior becomes familiar. It becomes part of your routine. And this creates momentum, a force that keeps you moving forward with less effort. Momentum is powerful because it reduces resistance. What once felt difficult begins to feel natural. What once required discipline begins to feel automatic. And as a result, you are able to do more, not because you are trying harder, but because you have built a system that supports you. This is the hidden reward of consistency, not just results, but ease. However, building momentum requires patience. You must be willing to continue even when it feels difficult.
You must trust that your efforts will pay off, even if you cannot see the results yet. And this is where many people struggle. They want proof before they commit. They want to see results before they believe in the process. But the compound effect does not work that way. It requires faith in the beginning, before the evidence appears. It asks you to continue without immediate reward. But if you do, if you stay consistent, if you keep taking small steps, the results will come. Not all at once, but gradually. And when they do, they will feel natural, as if they were always meant to happen. Because in a way, they were. They were built through every small action you took. As you move forward, remember this. You do not need to do something extraordinary today. You do not need to make a huge leap or achieve something impressive in a single moment. You only need to take the next small step, and then repeat it again and again. Because in the end, success is not the result of one big action. It is the result of many small actions compounded over time. And once you understand this, you will begin to see your daily efforts differently. You will stop asking, "Is this enough?" and start realizing every small step counts, more than you think.
Chapter 4. Building Habits That Last. If small steps are the foundation of success, then habits are the structure that holds everything together. Without habits, your progress depends on effort alone. And effort, while important, is limited. It requires energy, focus, and constant decision-making. But habits, once built, reduce that effort. They allow you to act consistently without needing to think about it every time. This is what makes habits so powerful. A habit is simply an action repeated enough times that it becomes automatic. It is something you do without needing to convince yourself, without needing motivation, and without needing to make a decision each time. It becomes part of your routine, part of your identity. And when your habits align with your goals, success becomes a natural result of how you live your life. But building habits that last is not as simple as deciding to change. Many people start with strong intentions. They choose a new habit, commit to it, and follow through for a few days or even a few weeks. But eventually, the habit fades. Life gets busy, motivation drops, and the routine breaks. This is not because habits are difficult to build. It is because they are often built the wrong way. One of the most common mistakes is starting too big. When you try to build a habit that requires a lot of time, energy, or effort, it becomes hard to maintain. You may succeed in the beginning, but over time, the resistance grows. The habit feels heavy, and eventually it becomes easier to stop than to continue. This is why habits are essential when building small steps. A habit should be so simple that it feels almost impossible to fail. It should fit easily into your daily life without requiring a major change in your routine. The goal is not to impress yourself with how much you can do. The goal is to create consistency, because consistency is what turns actions into habits.
For example, if you want to build a reading habit, do not start with an hour a day. Start with 1 page. If you want to exercise, do not begin with an intense workout. Start with a few minutes of movement. These actions may seem small, but they are powerful because they are sustainable. And sustainability is the key. A habit that you can maintain is more valuable than one you can only do occasionally. It is better to do a little every day than a lot once in a while. Because habits are not built through intensity, they are built through repetition. Every time you repeat an action, you strengthen the connection in your mind. You make it easier to do it again. And over time, that action becomes automatic. This is how habits are formed. But there is another important element: environment. Your environment plays a significant role in shaping your habits. It influences your behavior more than you may realize. The things around you,
Your space, your tools, your distractions either support your habits or work against them. If you want to build lasting habits, you must design your environment to make those habits easier. For example, if you want to read more, keep a book where you can see it. If you want to reduce distractions, remove what distracts you. If you want to practice a skill, make the tools easily accessible. These small adjustments reduce friction. They make it easier to take action. And when action is easy, consistency follows. At the same time, it is important to understand that habits are not just about what you do, they are about who you become. Every habit you build is a vote for the type of person you want to be. When you read, you are becoming a reader. When you practice, you are becoming someone who improves. When you show up consistently, you are becoming disciplined. This identity-based approach is powerful. Instead of focusing only on outcomes, you focus on becoming. You ask yourself, what would a disciplined person do? And then you take that action, even if it is small. Over time, these actions shape your identity. And once a habit becomes part of your identity, it becomes much easier to maintain. Because you are no longer forcing yourself, you are simply acting in alignment with who you are. However, building habits is not always a smooth process. There will be times when you miss a day, when you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. These moments are normal. They are part of the journey. What matters is not avoiding them completely, but how you respond to them. One missed day is not a failure.
The real danger is allowing one missed day to become many. This is why it is important to adopt a simple rule: never miss twice. If you skip a habit one day, make sure you return to it the next. This prevents small breaks from turning into long interruptions. It keeps your momentum alive. Because habits are easier to maintain than to restart. Another key principle is tracking. When you track your habits, you make your progress visible. You see the days you followed through, and this creates a sense of accountability. It also gives you a small reward, a feeling of satisfaction when you stay consistent. This may seem simple, but it is effective, because what gets measured gets maintained. Over time, as your habits become stronger, you can begin to expand them. You can increase the time, the intensity, or the complexity, but this should happen gradually. The foundation must always remain stable. Do not rush the process. Strong habits take time to build, but once they are established, they support you for a lifetime. They remove the need for constant effort. They reduce the reliance on motivation. They allow you to progress even on days when you feel less capable. And this is what makes them so valuable. Because success is not about what you do occasionally, it is about what you do consistently. Habits make consistency possible. As you continue your journey, remember that you are not trying to change your life overnight. You are building a system, a structure of small, repeatable actions that guide you toward your goals. Each habit is a step in that system. Each repetition is a reinforcement. Each day is an opportunity to strengthen what you are building. And slowly, without sudden change or dramatic effort, your life begins to transform. Not because of one big decision, but because of the habits you chose to build and the discipline you use to maintain them. One small step at a time. Chapter 5. Overcoming Resistance and Procrastination. There is an invisible force that stands between you and your goals. It does not shout, it does not fight you directly, and yet it has the power to stop you completely. It appears in quiet moments, in simple decisions, in the space between intention and action. This force is resistance. Resistance is the reason you delay what matters. It is the voice that tells you you can do it later. It is the feeling of heaviness when you think about starting.
It is the urge to choose comfort over effort, distraction over focus, and ease over growth. And closely connected to resistance is procrastination, the habit of postponing what you know you should do. Procrastination is not just about being lazy, it is deeper than that. It is often a way of avoiding discomfort. When a task feels difficult, uncertain, or overwhelming, your mind looks for relief. It chooses something easier, something familiar, something that gives you immediate satisfaction. And in that moment, procrastination feels like a solution. But it is only temporary. Because while you may feel better in the short term, the task does not disappear. It remains in the background, creating pressure, stress, and sometimes guilt. The longer you delay, the heavier it becomes. What once was a small task turns into a larger burden. This is how procrastination grows. And this is why overcoming it is essential if you want to move forward. The first step in overcoming resistance is understanding that it is normal. Everyone experiences resistance. It is not a sign that you are incapable or unmotivated. It is part of how the mind works. Your brain is designed to protect you, to conserve energy, and to avoid discomfort. When faced with something new or challenging, it reacts by pushing you toward what is easy. This is not a flaw, it is a natural response. But while this response may protect you in the short term, it can limit you in the long term, because growth requires discomfort.
If you want to improve, to learn, to achieve something meaningful, you must be willing to face moments that feel difficult. You must be willing to act even when it is not comfortable. This is where small steps become your greatest tool. Resistance is strongest at the beginning. The idea of starting often feels harder than the action itself. The task appears bigger in your mind than it really is. But when you reduce the size of the action, you reduce the resistance. Instead of thinking, I need to do this entire task, you think, I will just start with one small step. Just open the book. Just write one sentence. Just work for 5 minutes. These actions are simple. They do not trigger as much resistance because they do not feel overwhelming. And once you begin, something changes. The resistance weakens. You realize that the task is not as difficult as you imagined. The fear decreases. The effort becomes manageable. And often, you continue beyond that small step. Because starting creates momentum. This is one of the most important truths about procrastination. The hardest part is not doing the work, it is starting the work. Once you begin, the path becomes clearer. Another powerful way to overcome resistance is to remove unnecessary friction. Friction is anything that makes it harder to take action. It could be a cluttered workspace, distractions, lack of preparation, or even unclear goals. The more friction you have, the easier it is to procrastinate. But when you reduce friction, you make action easier. Prepare your environment. Decide in advance what you will do. Break tasks into smaller parts. These simple steps reduce the effort required to begin. And when starting is easy, procrastination loses its power. It is also important to understand the role of emotions. Many people wait until they feel ready to act. They believe they need to feel motivated, confident, or inspired before they can begin. But this is a mistake. Action does not come from feeling ready. Feeling ready comes from action. When you take the first step, your mindset begins to shift. You gain clarity, confidence, and focus as you move forward. Waiting for the perfect feeling only delays the process.
You do not need to feel ready. You only need to begin. Another strategy is to change how you view the task itself. Often, we make tasks seem bigger and more difficult than they are. We focus on the entire journey instead of the next step. This creates pressure and makes the task feel overwhelming. But when you shift your focus to the present moment, everything becomes simpler. Instead of thinking about everything you have to do, focus only on what you can do now. One step. That is all that matters. This approach reduces stress and makes progress possible. It is also helpful to accept that not every moment will be perfect. There will be times when you feel tired, distracted, or unfocused. You may not always perform at your best, but waiting for perfect conditions will keep you stuck. Progress does not require perfection. It requires action. Even imperfect action moves you forward. Even a small effort is better than none. Over time, these imperfect actions accumulate and create real progress. And this brings us back to the importance of consistency. Overcoming procrastination is not about eliminating resistance completely. It is about learning to act despite it. It is about building the habit of starting, even when it feels difficult. Each time you do this, you weaken the power of resistance. Each time you choose action over delay, you strengthen your discipline. And slowly, the pattern begins to change. What once felt difficult becomes easier. What once caused hesitation becomes routine. You no longer spend as much time thinking about whether to act. You simply act. This is how you move forward, not by waiting for resistance to disappear, but by learning to move through it. As you continue your journey, remember this. Resistance will always be there in some form. It will appear at the beginning of new challenges, at moments of uncertainty, and when you step outside your comfort zone. But it does not have to control you. You have the ability to take action anyway. You have the ability to start small, to reduce the pressure, and to move forward one step at a time. And in doing so, you break the cycle of procrastination. You replace delay with action. You replace hesitation with progress. Because in the end, success does not belong to those who never feel resistance. It belongs to those who learn to act despite it. One small step. That is all it takes to begin.
Conclusion. One step is enough. At the beginning of this journey, success may have seemed like something distant, something complex, something that required a major change or a perfect moment. It may have felt like a destination reserved for those with extraordinary talent, strong motivation, or ideal circumstances. But now you see it differently. You understand that success is not built in one moment. It is not the result of a sudden breakthrough or a single powerful decision. It is something much quieter, much more accessible, and much more within your control. It is built through small steps. Throughout this book, you have seen how those steps shape everything. You have seen how discipline matters more than motivation, how consistency creates progress, how habits form the structure of your life, and how even the smallest actions can grow into something powerful through time. You have also seen the challenges, the resistance that appears when you try to begin, the doubt that comes when results are not immediate, the temptation to stop when progress feels slow. These are not obstacles that disappear, they are part of the path. But now you are better prepared to face them, not with force, not with pressure, but with understanding. Because you no longer rely on big changes, you rely on small, steady action, and that changes everything. One of the most important lessons you can take from this book is this. You do not need to do everything at once. You do not need to transform your life overnight. You do not need perfect conditions or endless motivation. You only need to take the next step, and then repeat it. This simplicity is what makes the process powerful. When you focus on small steps, you remove the pressure that often leads to failure.
You stop overwhelming yourself with big expectations. You stop waiting for the perfect time. Instead, you begin where you are with what you have. And that is enough. Because every small step moves you forward. Even when progress feels slow, it is still progress. Even when results are not visible, change is still happening. Every action you take is shaping your future, building your habits, and reinforcing your identity. You are becoming someone who shows up, someone who continues, someone who does not stop. And this identity is more valuable than any short-term result. Because once you become that person, success is no longer uncertain. It is only a matter of time. There will still be difficult days. Days when you feel tired, distracted, or unmotivated. Days when you question whether your efforts are worth it. Days when it feels easier to stop than to continue. But in those moments, remember what you have learned. You do not need to do everything. You only need to do something. One small action. That is how you stay on track. Not by being perfect, but by being consistent. Not by doing more, but by continuing. And over time, those small actions create something meaningful. They build confidence. They build discipline. They build progress. Until one day, you look back and realize that you are no longer where you started. The change may not have been sudden, but it is real. The growth may not have been dramatic, but it is undeniable. And it all began with a single step. This is the power you now hold. The power to act even when it is difficult. The power to continue even when it is slow. The power to build even when the results are not immediate. You do not need to wait. You do not need to doubt. You do not need to search for something outside yourself. Everything you need to begin is already within your reach right now. So wherever you are in your journey, whatever your goal may be, remember this. Start small. Stay consistent. Trust the process. Because success is not something you find at the end of the road. It is something you create, step by step, day by day. And your next step is waiting. Take it.